This video is going to be about kitbashing and converting a miniature. Specifically, I've got these Orruk Brutes, kind of like elite forces, I guess. It's pretty large miniatures, and it's the first orcs I ever bought, and it's the start of my orc army. As soon as I got these orcs, I thought, I want to change them a little bit. And you might be wondering, well, why would you want to kitbash or like convert and change an already nice miniature? My reason, I guess, is because I want to personalize the miniature. I feel like I see these orcs around quite a bit. And I mean, especially sort of if you're into futuristic 40k space marines, how many times have you seen a space marine? Sorry, I'm not going to go. Sorry, not going there. Anyway, but I feel like I see these around a lot, and I want mine to look different from what other people's miniatures look like. Also, I had some more sort of conceptual ideas of what an orc looks to me might not actually be exactly how these are made, even though it's a really nice sculpt and it's it's marvelous miniatures. My orc in my head is a bit different from what it looks on the box. And so what is kitbashing? And to start off with, there's a lot of words thrown around. I wanted to introduce basically why and how I did it. But is it kitbashing? Is it conversion? There's all these different words and terminology that I'm not really, basically I'm going to change these in different ways. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to take bits and pieces from other kits, and I'm going to change the within whatever I got in the box. I'm going to move things around a little bit. That's what I'm going to do. I wanted them to have more armor. And so even before I opened the box, I was thinking, like, where could I get more armor from? And, can I maybe change the faces? And because I was thinking, like, I knew I was going to want to change the miniatures. So I started to look for what I could, use, what kind of bits. And because I'm relatively new, I know I say this a lot, and it's been like a year. So, I shouldn't really be new anymore to the miniature world. But when it comes to buying stuff, I'm trying to be really, taking it easy. So I don't have that much stuff lying around. It's not like I have a big box full of scrap bits of mini, plastic. I haven't got that. So I was browsing around, and this is when I sort of found problem number one. Problem number one with kitbashing, in my case, is very specific. It's very apparent that I guess a lot more people play futuristic games. I'm guessing specifically Warhammer 40,000 or 40k. K is for 1,000, kilo. It's Latin. Sorry. And it's apparent because when you start looking for bits and pieces, because there's several companies that make bits. They just make like heads or weapons, or they don't make, or some of them make full miniatures, but the point of this is that they make bits so that you can like swap the head from a space marine. You buy a space marine and then you buy some bits, and you can buy a special weapon and a special head, and all of a sudden you got your own space marine. Trying to find stuff for fantasy, bits and pieces for fantasy, is difficult, especially orcs. There's, I'm not going to say tons, but if you're working with orcs in a futuristic perspective, there's faces all over with berets and cigars and like these weapons with weird chainsaws and all kinds of stuff. Going to fantasy, I couldn't find pretty much a single bit made for fantasy orcs. So I started to have a look around other Games Workshop sort of miniatures, if there's anything, could I buy some other miniatures and just cut them up and use that? And at first I thought, it'd be cool if maybe they had some Stormcast armor on them. They'd sort of killed some Stormcast and took the armor and stuck it on. But then there's a problem with size. It's big guys, and I don't know where the girls are. You're going to have to ask Games Workshop about that. But anyway, it's a lot of muscles and things going, and the Stormcast, compared to me, probably big muscly folks, but compared to orcs, they look kind of slim. I checked out sort of Chaos Warriors, got lots of armor going there, but the thing as well with like the Stormcast and the Chaos Warriors and things like that, they're pretty compact. Like the sculpts, the miniatures themselves, it's difficult to sort of cut pieces out of them because they're really sort of incorporated with cloaks. And so where I ended up with finding bits, putrid blight kings, really sort of nasty looking, half armored sort of flesh sticking out, holes in them, moldy type folk. It looks like it's the kind of kit that has a lot of bits and pieces, and that, which is good, because if I'm looking for bits and pieces, and it's a lot of sort of armor, and it looks worn and torn, and there's spikes, and so I bought these. So you might be thinking, so you buy a full set of these just to cut them in pieces? Yes, that's exactly what I did. So back to my brutes. First time I opened the box up, and obviously I've cut pieces out since then. I started looking at it and I was like, yeah. Well, I'm not going to change any heads around, that's for sure, because the heads are sort of incorporated into the rest of the body. But I was also started, putting one together, and I was like, well, yeah, I like the idea of having a lot of armor, but there's not much green skin showing. And I like my orcs to show some more skin, basically. I want to see that green. It's very orcish to me. And they have these... They all have these chest. They're covering their chest. They've got bras, metal bras. And that comes on afterwards. And underneath there's actually sort of a stomach with some chest and muscles and things. And I realized that, I don't want anything there. And this is one of the things with like conversions. It's when you're putting your miniature together, or you buy it and you're gluing it together and everything, you don't actually have to do what they're telling you to do. You can change things around. Like a specific arm, it doesn't really have to go on a specific mini if it fits on another, and you can start swapping things around, and you can put different heads. You can see where I'm going here, but conversions don't actually have to be that you go and buy things from different brands and or different kits to kitbash, and I'm trying to say so much at the same time, and the only thing that comes out is you can actually alter whatever is already given to you. So in my case, the first thing I did was decide that all my Oryx are going to show their bellies. The only issue here was that sort of where they should be nipples. By the way, I don't know if orcs have nipples or not. It's still a mystery to me. But there's holes in their, in this region, because that's where you're supposed to stick some armor in. So that was my first thing, was like deciding that they should have nothing going here, and I would have to repair some of the stuff. And this is where green stuff comes in. I'm showing you some green stuff here. I think this is specifically from Gale Force 9. Lots of brands make green stuff. Green stuff is you see there's a green and the blue, light green and the blue. It's a 2-component, I guess, type of epoxy. So when you mix equal amounts of the blue and the green, it starts to harden. And this is something that you probably will need when converting in kitbashing. I've used it throughout the process, as you're going to see. Make sure you mix the green stuff really well, and that you have equal parts of the green and the blue. If you don't have equal parts, then it won't harden. And if you don't mix it well, it won't harden. So just make sure you do it really well. The thing is, it's kind of a bit sticky. So if you're going to be using this a lot, it's probably a good idea to have sculpting tools made out of or coated with silicone, because silicone doesn't stick. You'll notice if you buy this for the first time and try it out, it sort of sticks to your fingers quite a bit, and it's a bit, you try to press it in, and all that happens is that you're leaving thumbprints and stuff. Something that you can do, which is a bit of a trick, I guess, is that baking tray paper, the stuff that you put in your oven or maybe in your wet palette, is coated in silicone. So you can use that. You can use it to roll this stuff out on and things like that if you need to. But you can also just tear out a piece and like roll it around a toothpick, and you've sort of got a very cheap man's tool, silicone shaping tool. What you also can use if you want to smoothen out the surface is methylated spirit. Methylated spirit sort of ish dissolves green stuff. So you can pour up some methylated spirit and use a brush, and when you pour that on the green stuff and sort of brush it around, you'll notice that sort of whatever fingerprint marks or anything like that you had, you can sort of brush out and smoothen out and get a pretty smooth surface. So that's how I filled out, to start off with, the gaps in the holes. I just tried to make it look as natural as possible, part of the miniature, and then I sort of just brushed some methylated spirit on there with a brush just to smoothen it out. So apart from the chest thing, I didn't really follow the rules. Some of the people got different arms than they should have. Like I wanted this really cool claw on the boss, which meant that the other arm had to not be the one holding a head. But I figured, it's really cool that there's someone holding a head, so I put that on the other orc. That wasn't the boss, even though according to law in the assembly guide, only the boss should be the one holding the head. But I didn't finish them. I didn't put the shoulder pads on. I tried to put as little on there as I could before I figured out what I should take from the Blight Kings. I had some ideas where some pieces could go, but I also just cut off whatever I thought might be possible. So there's shoulder pads, there's sort of knee pads, there's helmets, there's chainmail, there's pieces of fur, there's all these bits. And I cut them out and I just had them. And I started trying, could this fit here? Could this fit there? If you actually want to see what things look like without without actually gluing it into place, you can use poster putty and like take a little piece of poster putty and like squeeze the bits together, and you can sort of half assemble it and go, yeah, that looks nice. One example, like with this orc, I put a piece of the shield from one of the Blight Kings on top of over his head on the armor. And I also wanted to put a different shoulder pad on. But I realized that, then I'm going to have to chop some bits and pieces of the orc's arm off to fit that shoulder pad. And that's one of the things with kitbashing. You can't really be afraid of not maybe damaging your miniature, because stuff is not going to fit if you don't sometimes start cutting plastic away. So, you're going to have to sometimes just find the courage and start filing away. Because I use nail files as well. Just use my really sharp knife and my nail files. And so for this orc, he got the thing around the neck, got another shoulder pad on the other shoulder, he got some fur. And then once you have these bits and pieces in place, by the way, I use the glue, it'll say here somewhere, whatever it's called, the type of glue that actually sort of melts plastic. You have to be aware of this because you can ruin stuff, but I prefer using it. But once you've got all your bits glued on, then usually there's stuff that doesn't look perfect. There might be holes here and there, And you have to go back to your green stuff and fill out gaps, and just fill out gaps. That's what I did with green stuff. And you can actually use green stuff more than just sort of filling out just the small gaps. Like I built this helmet. One of the Blight Kings has a helmet with horns on, and I thought that looks really cool, but like the head size comparatively was way off. So I had to split the Blight King's helmet in half pretty much, and just sort of glue it on the sides of the head of the orc, and then sort of build my own top of, well, it's not really a helmet. It looks more like it's sort of a leathery kind of cap with horns on. And I guess the more you use this green stuff and the more you learn how to sculpt, then obviously the better at it you will be. But, don't be afraid to try and just do a little bit of sculpting. I mean, this is nothing extreme at all. It's basically just filling out really wide cracks. Once I was done, there was a few places, mainly the chests. I was sort of afraid that it was too smooth. There was like no sort of texture going from where I fixed the holes on the chest. So I actually took some milliput, which is sort of like green stuff, but still not. Green stuff is more sort of sticky and hard, and like overchewed chewing gum. If that makes any sense. Anyway, I used the milliput because that's easier, I find, to dissolve in methylated spirit. So I made this sort of textury mixture of milliput and brushed over sort of the chest parts, just to give it a little bit of muscly type texture. And so I sort of pulled them where roughly, muscle lines would be. And here we can see my 5 kitbashed Oryx. And I mean, I used pieces from the kit as well. Like, because I didn't use the stuff that was supposed to be over their chest, I had quite a lot of pieces of metal that I could just glue here and there. And these miniatures are fairly simple to kitbash because basically they're already sort of just got their armor sort of slabbed on. So it's not very difficult to just slab on some more. And the only thing I haven't glued on is that they're supposed to have quite a lot of skulls and things going, and that's something that I want to sort of paint separately, so I don't want to glue it in place. So there's going to be a little bit more skulls going, but same thing there. Like some of these things that in theory are supposed to go on their shoulder pads, I think, at least on one of them, I'm going to use it as a mask because it, I think, would look kind of cool. And also, like, some of the things that are supposed to go on their shoulders, I put in other bits and, in other places. And that's sort of the thing with kitbashing and conversions. It's that you are free to use your own imagination to create a miniature that is right to you. Like if you look at a miniature and you go, I really like it, but it'd be cool if, it had a different weapon. Some of the cooler conversions that I've seen is sort of changing heads on stormcasts, because sort of in our minds, at least in my mind, stormcast, they're sort of really righteous and fighting for the good and stuff like that. And then if you put like a head on there that looks more like a rogue or a pirate or whatever, it really sort of changes the concept of a stormcast, which I find cool. And working futuristically, like in 40k, you'll have a lot more access to bits that you can buy. But I'm not really well traveled in the world of the future, so I'm not going to say too much about that. But yeah, I guess issue number 2, a long time ago in this video, in the middle of all the rambling, I mentioned a problem. Problem number 2 is, this is time consuming. If you find that as a problem, this is, only do this if you really want to do it and you think it's fun. It's nothing you need to do. It's not like someone's going to look at your mini and go like, you just used the standard out of the box version, That doesn't matter. The only reason to do this, if you actually like to do it, then do it. I found, you know, it's fun. It's fun feeling that you're creating your own sort of mini in a way. I find that fun. If you don't, if you're looking at this video going like that's totally pointless, then you shouldn't be kitbashing really. But if you do want to go for it, then have in mind that it's could be quite a time-consuming process. And there we are, sort of a short introduction to how you kitbash. I don't think there is any how. You can do it whatever way you want, but just sort of how I did it. If you want to get started, hopefully there's been some inspiration. And I mean, basically have in mind that nothing is. The point of this is creating your own thing. If you want to put mushrooms on the head of an elf, go for it. There's no right and wrong. That's to me is the whole point of kitbashing. You're creating your own miniatures that fit into your sort of own realm or world, and so just go for it. Bye.